Good time, everybody, from wherever you are. I'm Eddie Farmer from Nairobi, Kenya. So, in the last few days, the East African community has been reeling from the horrendous tale of abduction, torture, and sexual assault of Kenya's and Uganda's human rights activists Boniface Mwangi and Agather Atuhaire. So, like a week ago, the news about the disappearance of these two human rights activists, Boniface Mwangi from Kenya and Agatha Atuhaire from Uganda, rocked the East African community, online community, and started spreading. So the news about the disappearance came out and started spreading up until 3 days later when the two emerged. From what they've been saying is the Tanzania's torture chambers in the hands of the Tanzanian police under the order of I don't know who, but everyone is suspecting that it was under the order of the president of the country, Mama Samia Suluhu Hassan. And so when they came out, they started narrating their story. Now, ever since, the horror has just been unfolding. When they came out, they gave brief details of the horror they were subjected to and disappeared. Assumably, their disappearance was just to regain their energy, recollect their memory, and get some strength. Remember, when they came out, they were looking absolutely devastated, absolutely frail. They were so weak that they couldn't even walk properly. They couldn't even talk properly. Perhaps they had even forgotten some of the things that they were taken through in the hands of the Tanzanian police. So they disappeared, and just a day ago, talking about the day before yesterday, they came out again and gave a proper account of everything that they could remember happened to them in the hands of the rogue, brutal, malicious Tanzanian police. That is the talk of East Africa right now, and it's so serious that it's risking the break of the diplomatic cohesion that has been in the region for this whole time since these three countries gained their independence. And a lot is happening. And I want to talk about just two or three things because the story is very long. I don't want to tackle the whole story, I don't want to address the whole controversy, but a few things are really intriguing, and that's my focus. First of all, is a shock that these three countries, Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania, are still abducting and torturing their people so many years after independence. Remember, last year, the Kenyan government abducted Maria Sarungi, the Tanzanian human rights activist. They tortured her and dumped her somewhere in the Kenyan coast, where she was later transported back to Tanzania. Okay, and just before then, the key opposition figure in Uganda, Kizza Besigye, had been abducted here in Kenya, tortured as well, and whisked back to Uganda. And ever since, they opened the treason charges against him, and the case has been going on. The same Boniface Mwangi, he has been abducted here in Kenya. He has been tortured several times. At some point, they even tried to shoot him, and all of you saw that. Okay? It's absolutely shocking that these three countries are doing these heinous acts to their citizens. So many years of independence, and these three countries claim to be so democratic and so civil governed. It doesn't make sense. And even the details of the acts themselves, the details of the torture themselves, where we talking about sexual assault in civilized societies. Do you guys take your time and think about sexual assault, like for what it actually is? Because talking about some people being raped, talking about some men being sodomized. What is that? So talking about police drawing out their hands, grabbing someone's private parts, squeezing them or pulling them or inserting their fingers in your. This is what I have to say about this particular act. This is an act straight from hell. It's totally diabolical, and that gives you a hint of the kind of governments that we have and the kind of power that rules over these governments. Okay? Just open your eyes and look at what power really establishes these governments. Whenever you see a state agency supporting such acts, such diabolical acts, you know that that particular government is serving under that particular power or that kind of power, which is the power from the devil. And that's how you know that these governments are actually established satanically. They're established by the power of Satan. That's why when they capture the people that are opposing their rule, they do them such diabolical acts. Okay? Sodomy is an act from hell. It's demonic. It's the kind of humiliation that the colonialists perpetrated on our people. And it was purely satanic. And it remains to be purely satanic. It has never changed. So these governments basically copied what the colonialists were doing to them. And now they're doing the exact same evil to their people, which is satanic. And I'm telling you, these governments that you call your governments are established by witches. These government officials, these politicians, they go to the witches, they get their powers, they come bamboozle you, they deceive you, they rob the throne, okay? They sit on a throne by force, they impose themselves, and they continue ruling with that power that they got from the devil. It is satanic. And that's why they commit this act. And this happens on everyday basis. By the way, don't think that it's happening now to just these activists. No. This happens to almost every single person that opposes the government. In the Moi times, it was very rampant. And everyone knows that. Every Kenyan knows just the kind of brutality the Moi's government perpetrated on its people. Okay? Very diabolical acts. And I'm telling you, these governments are established by evil forces, and that's why they rule with the power of evil, and that's why they shoot you dead in the streets when you rise against the system, because that is how the system operates. The system of the devil operates through bloodshed and torture. So what happens is, the witches make a deal with these politicians, they install them in power, and the politicians in turn protect the witches. There are buildings that the police never visit. There are buildings and properties that the government cannot touch because these properties belong to these witches, the witches that install them, the witches that sustain their power and their rule. That's why they don't touch their properties. They cannot even talk about them. And you guys don't know these things, but I'm telling you because I know this is what exactly happens. And a lot of people have come out and confessed that this is actually what happens. The witches themselves, they've confessed that this is what they do. This is the kind of partnership and cooperation that they have with the government's officials and the politicians. Okay? So when you see these things happening, you know that your governments are under the influence of the power of Satan. It is governments established by witches. Some of these people, some of the politicians themselves are witches. And you saw the Tanzanian parliament, all of them supporting these acts. Remember the debate that went down in the House of Assembly in Tanzania when this whole story started coming out, and these MPs were supporting it. They were cheering it up. They were saying even the lawyers that were, returned from the airport should have been subjected to the same kind of acts. So Tanzania basically supports sexual violence, okay, sexual assault, torture, because that's what works for them. And that's how you know the kind of people that are governing you, that are ruling you. We have the rule of law. But these governments and these officials cannot follow the rule of law. They are crossing and breaking every piece of it. They are subverting the law in its entirety and doing things against the law, and they expect the people to follow the law. What kind of rule is that? You know? So the thing here is, I personally think it is not even worth it to use your effort and resources to fight politicians politically. Dawa ya moto sio moto, dawa ya moto ni maji. Okay, watu wanasemanga dawa ya moto ni moto, but that's a drunk saying. It can never be true. Nobody can fight the political system. The political system is purely established through witchcraft, and it's basically the devil's system. And to crack that kind of system, you have to be on the very opposite of that system. You'd have to be hooked on the supernaturals. You'd have to have a lot of God, a lot of spirit, a lot of Holy Spirit with you to break that kind of system. Personally, I would never fight the government politically. They're the kings and queens of politics. They know all the political maneuvers. They have the tools of power. They have the resources that they take from the people, and they will use everything against you. Nobody can break the political system. You break it if you approach that system using the opposite system, which is the system of God, the system of righteousness, the system of the Holy Spirit. You can only break that system using the alternative system, not its own system.